All right, welcome into this week's session. I'm super excited and happy to have Megan Hottman on with the show today. I came across Megan's story through the amazing documentary, The Engine Inside. It's one of my most favorite films. I love it, and Megan's story was featured on that, and I've been following her content ever since. So again, I was super excited and happy to be talking with you, Megan. Megan, welcome to the podcast. Happy to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me today. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Yes, and I'm also excited to have your dogs as well in the background. So
Oh my gosh, apologies ahead of time for the two puppies that are going to be vocal. I've got them
no,
bribed right now, but it's not going to last long.
I love it. I love it. We need some extra entertainment. So, but yeah, Megan, if you could just start off by introducing yourself, who you are, where you're from, just, kind of that basic stuff. But yeah, just go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Megan. I am based in Colorado. I am an attorney by trade. I like to joke that I'm a recovering lawyer. Recently became a certified meditation teacher and am leading some retreats, working on a book right now. Um, I found cycling my third year of law school and went on to work for two judges out of law school, and then was an associate for a law firm for a fairly brief amount of time before I realized I wanted to be able to have my own schedule, kind of like you and I were talking before we got on the show, and was an aspiring professional bike racer at the time. So launched my own firm back in 2010 and became known as the cyclist lawyer, a lawyer who ultimately exclusively represented injured bicyclists. And that's kind of what I made my name in the legal profession doing for the last 13 years or so. And now I'm on a really nice sort of sabbatical, or just a break from lawyering and wiring, and parenting two shelter rescue puppies, and yeah, setting down that warrior hat for a minute, which is really nice.
Awesome. Yeah. So talk to me about I wanted to ask a little bit more about the meditation, like work that you're doing. What got you into that? What does that look like? Yeah. I'm super curious about that.
Sure. Well, during COVID, I think the organization that I decided to train with is called the Radiant Sutras. It's a married couple out of California. That's really when they took their materials digitally, just given the nature of social distancing. And I found them through, I believe it was a Facebook ad around 2022. I was recovering from a really bad crash myself, having been hit by a motorist that June, and their offering popped up. It might have been Instagram, and I signed up for their 200-hour certification course and found that I really loved them, the couple, as well as the community that they curate through this online certification process. And when the 200-hour certification was complete, I doubled down for their advanced meditation teacher training, just really enjoying the weekly involvement and connection with the community, and took the 500-hour, which culminated last spring, February of 24, and became officially certified as a meditation teacher. So it's kind of like yoga or aerobics instruction or what have you. It's a curriculum that someone creates that you learn and then test out. And the reason I chose this type of meditation, there are numerous forms of meditation. This form is called instinctive meditation, and the basis of their belief is that we know what we need. And so we are not asking people to sit stationary, cross-legged, uncomfortable, forcing all thoughts out of our brain and flogging ourselves mentally if we sort of lose focus. Instead, it's, do you need to sit? Do you need to lie down? What does your body call for? Do you need to dance? Do you need to move around? And actually welcoming the thoughts that come in. And the central belief of this form of meditation is that there are many things in our subconscious or unconscious that are waiting and hoping to have a moment of our time and attention. And you know this from mental health work. Those things that run back there in our unconscious that frankly run a good chunk of our life without our knowing it, is really just waiting for an opportunity for us to sit and be with it non-judgmentally, and just noticing what comes in. So I really like this because in my mind, what I'm doing is creating a container for someone to have a meeting with themselves that they might potentially ordinarily not do. And we get to just explore what comes up. And I'm not a therapist, and I'm not a psychologist. And so sometimes it's warranted for me to make those referrals for that person to seek professionals in those spaces. That's not what we're doing. We're just simply allowing someone to be present with themselves. And I think more than ever, the wildness of the world that we live in calls for that. If nothing else, it just asks someone to sit still for a moment. which a
Yeah.
lot of people don't give themselves the gift of that.
No, absolutely. And vice versa, coming from a mental health standpoint, I recommend so many people the value and practice of meditation, right? So many people struggle with, yeah, just sitting there alone with their thoughts. And so, yeah, I love the idea of meditating with someone else, because it's almost like this, yeah, this coach or this someone to be accountable to, and they can kind of
Yes,
guide you through it. Because anyone can like listen to a video, and those are great. You know, those definitely have their
absolutely.
place. You can definitely find that, but to have that human connection, yeah, amplifies it that much more. So I love that.
I
That's
agree.
so cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the accountability component that you mentioned as well, and just that holding of the container of the safe space and carving out the time. And if someone's paying someone for something, they tend to assess a certain value or worthiness to it. And so they
Mhm.
take it more seriously. And it's really a gift to themselves. It's just asking a lot of open ended questions. And frankly, what I'm realizing more and more is how um, many of us do not give ourselves permission to listen to our intuition, and meditation offers that opportunity to check in with what our inner knowingness is really trying to get us to pay attention to.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And again, like you said, just that ability to pause and just kind of reflect, because I joke around with this, but there's a serious aspect of it to it. Like, one of the best values of therapy is that you get to talk to somebody for 50 to 60 minutes without interruptions of a phone or a screen, right? Like, that's such a rare thing. And to just be present with somebody and listening and bouncing ideas back and forth, that's such a valuable asset that we don't have a lot in this world. So such a great thing
No,
that you
and the
provide.
gift of being heard. Like,
Yeah.
how
Yep.
often are we actually just really intently listened to, other than in therapy or perhaps a confessional at church? It's rare. It's a really
Yeah.
rare moment that someone is genuinely listening, not to change our mind or affect us in some way, but just to hear you and seek understanding. So I think
Yeah.
there's a gift in that too, as well as therapy. And I'm a huge believer in therapy too.
Yeah. Absolutely, so cool. Yeah, I love that you do that. And it sounds like, I mean, you said you're a recovering attorney, taking a bit of a sabbatical, and transitioning more to this meditative work. So, again, I commend you for that. I think it's so cool how people can transition and jump into different things and whatever speaks to them or calls to them. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, I wanted to ask. You said you got into cycling in law school. Did you ride as a kid? Did you like have a bike, ride around a little bit then, kind of spark that interest? Or like, yeah, what was the first, kind of, the evolution of the bike riding for you, Megan?
I did ride as a little kid. I have photos. I don't have a recollection of it, but my parents have shown me photos when I was little on like a metal uh, tricycle. And then I remember saving my money to buy a 10 speed when I was 10. I think it was a Huffy, maybe. It was a little big for me, but I remember being really excited about that. And then at 15, kind of bought my first real bike, which back then was $500 from a bike shop in Omaha, Nebraska, which is where we lived at the time. And then I think the trajectory for 99% of young people is you get the driver's license and the bike quickly falls away as a priority. So that was my case. I was a runner in high school and ran some marathons in college, but wasn't,
Mhm.
that same $500 bicycle. It's a Bridgestone. I actually still have it. Just kind of sat around, but wasn't really being used. And came into law school and decided to do a half Ironman triathlon for some reason, and really decided during that event that the middle leg, the bike portion, was interesting to me. And so started kind of dabbling in bike racing and really, went all in as of that
Mm.
third year of law school and thereafter.
Yeah, and you're not the only person that said that. That they got into triathlons and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, I really like this bike part. This is
Mm-hmm.
fun. This is a fun part.
Right.
So cool. So, I mean, you were, yeah, I mean, doing some semi-pro stuff, pro stuff. Like, I mean, you were definitely training pretty
Yeah.
hardcore. And then I'm curious how you got like tied in with the engine inside. Like, how did they reach out to you? Why did they want to feature you? Like, yeah, how did that whole thing go?
Yeah. Great question. People for Bikes has always been near and dear to my heart. From the moment I began my firm in 2010, it's been, what can I do to amplify the work that you guys are doing? They're based in Boulder. I was based in Golden, so close proximity. Just amazing people, took part in any activity that they had going on, basically. And they were contacted by the folks that made that film. The group is called Anthill Films. They're out of Squamish, BC. And they checked in with people for bikes and said, who are some folks that come to mind that we should think about interviewing for this firm? And they were putting feelers out all over the place. So I think they had a list of about 50 people that they were actively interviewing and talking to about the film as they were getting more and more clarity on the direction that they wanted to take it. And they were working with partners in the cycling industry like Shimano and Pon, and really trying to deliver this message of just what a powerful tool the bike is for what I would say normal people, right? None of us are professional cyclists. It's a very broad spectrum of characters in that film that they ended up settling on. And so ultimately they decided I was a good candidate for the character of like the activist, the advocate, of course, an attorney for cyclists. I was based in the United States. The only other person in the film in the US is in Alaska. And then the other characters, one's in Canada and the others are also, well, I guess there is one out in New York too. I take that back. And so each of our characters plays sort of a different role as it pertains to the bike. One character I think is the most impactful in the film is Jay, the Indigenous rider who struggled with drug and alcohol abuse, and the bike, literally saved his life, as he says. And so they came and filmed me first in October of 2021, right as the COVID travel restrictions were starting to lift. So they came and filmed my section there in Golden, Colorado, filmed me at my office. My friend Gwen had been hit and killed that May. It was a very high profile case. So we were able to weave in some of the footage around her case and some discussion of her in that interview. It was a really great experience working with those guys doing the filming. Bear with me on the sidebar. I'm going somewhere with this.
Oh, I love it. This is great.
And then so by then, like early 22 and whatever, COVID restrictions totally lifted, travels no problem. So they fly all over the world, interview all the characters. Well, between October 21 and then the summer of 22, when they finished their filming, right about the time they finished their filming, I was struck by a motorist in June of 22. And I reached out to him and said, you guys are never going to believe this, but this is what just happened. And they said, we feel very strongly that we need to come back to Golden and film some portions of you. I was like fresh out of surgery. I was in not good condition, as you saw. And I tried to talk them out of it because I said, this is not the pretty part of cycling. This is what scares people away from riding bikes. I don't think you want to include this in the film. And they said, we respectfully disagree. We'd really like to come back. So just in the interim of those two time frames, they saw a very different version of me on the second visit than they saw on the first visit. And so then they captured some of that footage, which was kind of eerie in a way, because in the first time they filmed me saying something like, I always tell people I hope to never hear from you, because if I hear from you, it's your worst day, it's your worst nightmare. And so then they got to kind of replay those words in the context of my own worst day and my own worst nightmare, and sort of showing me rehabbing, which I think did paint sort of a powerful and kind of ironic picture. And it was a really cool experience being involved with them, being involved in the premieres. And then I was actually the premiere coordinator for Anthill, so helped all of these organizations worldwide host their premieres of the film. So I got to interact with a lot of people that were showing the film, which was cool. It really impactful experience, top to bottom. So I can't tell you exactly why they chose me. I just know that that's the character I played in the film, and I was really honored to be chosen.
Powerful. Yeah, that movie, honestly, I recommend it to everybody. It's such a powerful film. And yeah, I'm curious, like, as you were going out to the different premieres and scheduling everything, yeah, what was the response from people? Like, what was that experience like for you?
It was really humbling. There is something about watching your life, and particularly the part they filmed of me post crash. I was very raw, very emotional. Yeah. Even if I had wanted to hold myself together, I couldn't have. And so there are tears, and it's like a very vulnerable space to have been filmed in. And then to know that that's being shown worldwide, and all these people are putting eyeballs on to, a really not fun part of my life. That's really something, but the response was really positive, and I heard a lot of really great things, which meant a lot. And I do just want to tell people listening, it's free. You can watch it on engineinsidefilm.com. It's on Red Bull TV, and I hear they're also showing it on airplanes these days. I think that it's a timeless film. It's a timeless story that it tells, which is just simply the bike has the power to change the lives of the youth in the Bronx, a woman racing the I Did a Bike in Alaska, a cycling attorney based in Golden, Colorado, an indigenous individual who suffers trauma and goes through drug and alcohol addiction. I mean, it's just a really cool way of telling the underlining theme of your podcast, which is the power of the bike to save us.
Yeah, and the guy in Ghana who makes the bikes with
Oh,
bamboo, like
bamboo.
amazing, so
So
cool.
cool. Yep.
Yeah, I love it,
It's really
and
neat.
yeah, it's so cool. So I mean, yeah, definitely check it out. Right, I'll link to it in the show notes here. But it's yeah, I highly recommend everyone check it out. But yeah, so Megan, as you've experienced
Mhm.
the tough end of bicycling, definitely, experiencing all
Indeed.
these crashes and stuff, and that was one thing that kind of stood out to me in the interview that you did. Is you're just like, you're never going to pry this bike away from me. Like, I'm always going to be back. Where does that come from? Like, because so many people would just be done. They're like,
I've
I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah, I've been asked that by people who love me very much. I mean, are you sure this is something you want to keep doing? I
Yeah.
just did a 50-mile ride on the roads here a couple days ago, and I was just reflecting on that again of
Mm,
just at any moment in time, this can be my last ride or my worst ride. We know that. We know that that's factually true for anyone who rides a bike on roads. And it just is so important to me and so impactful to me that it is not something I would consider putting away and stopping.
mm,
Even if I had to extremely limit it, where I'm only going to ride on protected bike paths, uh, I don't see myself ever not riding a bike. But I really love using the bicycle as my commuter. I really love it as setting aside the recreation and the fitness component. I really love what it does for me and my ability to engage in the society and the community around me when I ride my bike to places like the grocery store, just running errands, even just engaging with people at a red light whose window is down. I don't get those opportunities inside of a vehicle or even really as a pedestrian. And so it's just too important to me to set it down. But no question, it comes with risks for sure.
yeah. Yeah. And honestly, I think that that's one of the aspects of bike riding that kind of helps us kind of deal with our own mortality, right? Like, we're just
Mhm.
like, I have to be okay with not
Yep.
being in control all the time, and also, I love how you point this out too in the film, and I've tried to do this as much as I can in my community, but just trying to advocate more, for safer infrastructure and doing the things that we can to make it safe for as many people as we can. So such a great work, and so I wanted to ask you that question as well. Like, what tips or what advice would you give to people as far as like the advocacy portion of it, right? I mean, because you've seen, you know, I'm sure just crazy things
Yeah.
with your law practice and everything. But yeah, what are the things that you've seen that have been helpful, or what advice or tips would you give on the advocacy front?
I think that's a really great question because, in my opinion, anyone who rides a bike is and should be an advocate. It's a really interesting space. We see what Mothers Against Drunk Driving, for example, has done on that front. And so, hypothetically, any of us could be the victim of a drunk driving collision. And so, um, the call to action there, I think, is pretty obvious. In the cycling realm, anyone who rides a bike has every incentive and reason and skin in the game to make cycling safer. And unfortunately, what we see is the number of people who ride bikes versus the number of people who get involved in advocacy. It's like 1 to 3%.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate because it really does take all of us. And what I've learned is that bike advocacy is an endurance sport. It is like turning the Titanic. If you're looking for fast, big moves, it does not exist. And so a lot of people lose patience and leave the specter of bike advocacy. Those who hang in there and who have the endurance and see things through do ultimately see big wins. Colorado finally just passed the hands-free driving law where you can't hold a phone while driving. And we've got some great laws on the books, in large part thanks to our cycling advocacy organization, Bicycle Colorado, which is really one of the leaders nationwide. And, it can be anything from making donations to showing up to local advocacy meetings. And unfortunately, I see a lot of cyclists just sort of say, like, I don't have the time. It's not interesting to me. But I mean, your safety is very much impacted by the work that advocacy did. And a lot of it's unpaid advocacy. A lot of it's just simply people that keep showing up, keep testifying at the Capitol, keep hounding their lawmakers. This is one of the things I love about People for Bikes is they make it very easy to mobilize. You just sign up for People for Bikes and you put yourself on their email list. It's free. And then when they have an issue coming down, they will auto-populate an email for you and auto-select your elected officials and make it very easy for you to add your own language and send that off. And what we've learned, because they flew a group of us out to DC to meet with lawmakers about bicycle issues, is they really do listen to the squeaky wheel. And so the more people pipe up, the better. The more likely it is that something's going to get accomplished. And so my ask would be that to anyone who sees themselves as a cyclist, whether it's at your very local level, or your state level, or even a national level, if at minimum all you do is sign up for People for Bikes, please be involved in the discussion, because it really does take all of us. Since for some reason, especially in the US, cyclists are still seen as fringe, versus places like Amsterdam, where it's the norm. We're still sort of seen as fringe, and people don't understand the importance of dedicating some of those funds to bike lanes, bike paths, better laws.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So peopleforbikes.org, is that where
Yes.
people sign up?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's the easiest thing you can do. And then from there, sort of see where your attention takes you. In Golden, for example, we have a localized group that's specific to the county called Bike Jeffco. And it's a group of volunteers that have just consistently shown up and have some really great wins to show for it. But it takes endurance. There's not going to be any fast, quick action. Things take 5, 6, 7 years sometimes to really see fruition.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those connections that you make, that networking, the relationships that you build, and then just that consistency, right? Like that's the theme
Yep.
with a lot of this stuff.
Yep.
And we've been advocating a lot for different things around here, and it's always super exciting when you are heard, and when they do put in a bike lane, or they do
Absolutely.
reach out to consult you about something. You're like, hey, okay, like let's do this. Like, yeah, like you say, it's never. I don't think there's ever a finish line. It's always gonna be. There's always going to be things that you can always improve on. And I think that's kind of like you said, the endurance of it. It's kind of the fun aspect of it in my mind. So,
but what a win when they do reach out to you. And quite frankly, like a city planner could easily put in a poorly designed bike lane that no one uses, or they could request the input of 10 or 20 local cyclists who could say, oh, actually, that's not going to work for me. But if you just do it like this, it's going to be great. And then you end up with infrastructure that people are legitimately using. That's one of my favorite things about Strava too, is that they give that data to cities. And I always ask cyclists, please make sure you mark your commutes when you are commuting as a commute within Strava, because that creates these specific city maps for cities that Strava then gives that data to cities so that they can prioritize infrastructure spending, because of course they can't afford everything that they want to do. And so they'll say, where are our priority areas? Oh, well, let's look and see where cyclists are riding, because we inherently take the path of least resistance that we perceive to be the safest. And that's not going to be immediately apparent to a city planner, especially if they don't ride a bike. And then they start looking into the data and like, oh, isn't this interesting that from the cyclist perspective, this is the least likely to result in injury path of travel. We should spend some time and thought on this area. So Strava is really helpful there too.
I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that Strava shares that information. That's cool.
Yeah, it is. They used to sell it to cities and now they just give it to them. So it's really awesome information in like real time, to have.
Yeah, I love that. That's so cool.
We've all
done,
Strava.
Somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so cool. Well, nice. Well, as far as, I mean, you mentioned, you commute by bike. You mentioned you do these long recreational rides and everything. I'm curious, just like, what does your riding look like now? Like on a day-to-day basis, how do you get out? How do you ride? What does that look like?
Right now, in this current season of life, I'm riding the least I've ever ridden, because the tan puppy back here that I recently adopted has really bad separation anxiety.
Yeah.
So we are running a lot more lately, because she will not let me out of her sight, and I'm working on that. So doggy daycare once a week is when I get to go out and do my long bike rides and get my workouts in. Otherwise, I'm working on them also to let me tow them in the Burley trailer behind me, so that they can come with me, and then I can still at least pedal a little bit. But aside from this current season of life that I'm in, generally I ride more miles than I drive every year. So it's usually around 8,000 or so miles on the bike. A chunk of that is definitely e-bike commuting. I have an e-bike. I was an early adopter of an e-bike. I swear by it as my daily driver. I'm fortunate enough to live in places where that's feasible, where running errands within a 10 or 15 mile radius pretty much accomplishes everything in life that I need to accomplish. Gym, bank, coffee shop, library, grocery store, hair salon, you name it. And then recreationally, I usually will log a fair number of miles on my road bike and then gravel. And then I've gotten more into mountain biking, which means you post fewer miles, usually
Hmm.
more vert, but fewer miles. A hard mountain bike ride can be, 9 miles in an hour versus, 18 or 20 on a road bike. So it's a lower volume, totally different kind of riding. So it's all of those things mixed together. It's any variation of road, gravel, mountain biking, e-biking, typically almost daily. Yeah.
Yeah. I loved how when you were talking about your tan puppy came right up and gave
Came
you a
right up.
kiss right on cue.
Like, oh, me with the separation anxiety?
No, it couldn't be. Yeah, that's lovely. I love it.
We're getting there, but it's really trying. I really miss riding my bike often, but we're
Yeah.
getting there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love seeing people out on the trails with their dogs in the trailer, or do you take them out mountain biking? Does he run the trails
Not
with you?
yet. That's
Yeah.
that's the next goal, is to teach them how to. I'm kind of a firm believer of keeping your dogs leashed.
Yeah.
That's a polarizing issue, but I personally feel responsible for keeping my dogs on leash, and so just teaching
Sure.
dogs to navigate single track on a extendable leash without getting all tangled up in the bike.
Mm,
And especially since there's two of them, that's been a little bit challenging, kind of
yeah.
doing one at a time. But that's definitely on the list of things that they learn how to do. It'll
Just
be good for
go.
all of us.
Yeah, middle of nowhere,
Uh-huh.
Megan, and no, you're not gonna run into anybody and just let them run, and you just
Exactly.
ride. Yeah.
It'd be great. That would be a dream come true for all of us. Yeah, they
Yeah.
could use a proper blowout like that, I'm sure.
Well, I did want to ask though. I've seen on your content. Do you have an adventure van? Do you live the van life a
Yeah.
little bit?
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
I have a camper van. I call it intermittent van life. So I don't want to be misleading. I'm not full time in the van. I
Hmm.
intermittently pop out, and recently did like a 15-day stint where I just kind of kept extending it and kind of going where the next place was that called me. Take the bikes, take the dogs, and we get to spend a lot of time in outside places, which is really important. And the dogs actually do really well with van life. And that allows me to see and experience even more places to ride bikes. And recently got to ride the Loop in Tucson, which is this amazing 100+ mile protected bike path that goes all over Tucson. And I wish every city had something like that. So I
Wow.
get to go try out places I've always wanted to ride. And as you know, there's nothing more exciting and more special than getting to know a new place by bicycle.
It's the best. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What? So I mean, just to Tucson. What are some other memorable places that you've been to
Oh
that were
man,
been fun for you?
most of the adventuring we do is Colorado and Arizona, and pretty much everywhere that you can imagine. Some of the more obvious ones like Grand Canyon, all over the place in Colorado. And being able to post up in places without cell signal is really my favorite thing, because you spend a day touching your phone thinking maybe there's a signal, maybe there's, and then you finally learn the phone doesn't work here, and then you put it down and then you
Mm,
stop thinking about it, which is really nice. It's amazing how one will fill their time when the phone becomes obsolete. So that is my most favorite thing. It could be anything from camping on Cottonwood Pass in Buena Vista and riding the pass there. Catalina State Park in Tucson is really great, and I love camping on Mount Lemmon in Tucson. Mount Lemmon is like world class road riding. It's really incredible. Uh, yeah, there's really nothing that's off limits. I was just down in Patagonia, Arizona, and then we went out to Patagonia Lake State Park. So slowly making my way through all of the Arizona state parks, Colorado state parks. Camping on the beach in California is amazing. There's state parks out there on the beach. That's an incredible experience to just have like the van and then the ocean. It's pretty great.
man.
It's really nice. I have to say, vans are expensive. And there's no way I would go on this many trips and do this many things if I was constantly booking hotels. I just wouldn't.
Mm,
So the upfront cost, no question, that's real. But I would say like my per use, per time, per adventure, per trip cost is really low because we go so often. So, and being able to take the dogs and be self-contained, and it's really cool. And again, I get to meet super neat people everywhere we post up. So
yeah.
I highly recommend it. I'll give a shout out to the company that built my van, because their model is to actually rent out built camper vans. So for people that just want to try camper life, You can fly
Yeah.
into Phoenix and you can go pick up a built out camper van at Boho Vans in Tempe and give yourself the experience of, cooking all your own meals and having your little hotel room on wheels. It's pretty fun.
So cool. And yeah, like you said, to have your bikes right there with you and to just adventure. I mean, yeah,
It's pretty great.
exploring a new area by bike is the absolute best.
It
It's so
really
much
is.
fun.
It really is. I think it's the best way to actually get to know a place in a way that a hotel room, for me at least, just
Yeah.
hasn't been quite the same.
Yeah. And even, I'm in a phase of life where I don't, we're not traveling a whole lot. We got, pretty young kids, but the fun thing for me just on a day-to-day basis when I ride every day to work is sometimes I'll give myself an extra 5-10 minutes and I'll go down a road that I've never gone down before.
I
And I'm
love
like,
it.
I didn't know this road was in my city. Like, this is cool. This is a cool path, and just taking a little extra time. And so,
Awesome.
again, you just feel the fabric of your city just that much more and just explore it. So it's the best.
I don't know how people do it that sit in their cars for an hour each way to and from. And I mean, that's not
Yeah.
uncommon, right? And people will be like, oh, it's not that far. It's only an hour drive, each way. Okay, what could you do with 2 hours a day? I mean,
Hmm.
we get 2 hours of exercise in the time that they're sitting there watching their heart rates get ramped up and watching their nervous system get hijacked by
Yeah.
traffic, and we're pedaling, and it's a really different experience.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And just that ability to process the day and just kind of get my mind at ease. That's the biggest benefit for me. But yeah, I wanted to ask you, you've talked a lot about, I love your phrase there that you believe in the power of the bicycle, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
what is that power for you? Like how has that, benefited your mental health, your overall wellness? Yeah. What has the bike done for you in that way?
So I started as a racer and then went to the National Bike Summit in 2014 and was struck by how there was this whole convention of people who weren't racers. And it like really opened my eyes to the fact that there are other people who ride bikes besides just those of us very sort of egocentric, cyclists that race bikes that think that we're, everything. So then I got turned on to the advocacy space, which tends to be a whole another group of people. And I really wish the racers would join the advocacy situation, because the racers are the ones that are logging the thousands and thousands of miles that are most visible, really, in many ways. So the advocacy thing then turned me into commuting, because it's like, well, wait, if I can go do this really long 4-hour bike ride or whatever, and then I'm going to get in my car and drive to the grocery store, that doesn't make sense. That's silly. So that's when the commuting started for me in earnest, was around 2014, 2015. And, when you're training for fitness and to get fit and to get fast, you're usually trying to hit some sort of metric or hit your intervals, oftentimes working with a cycling coach, hit this many watts for this long. That's not to say there isn't processing time on those rides, but it's for a different purpose. Like, you're out there putting in the hours to be fast. It really was with the commuting when that started that I started to appreciate this whole other nuance of pedaling for the sake of going from point A to point B at whatever leisurely speed I felt like going. And then my adoption of the e-bike, I think I got my first one in 2018, was really the game changer as far as the bike becoming now a therapeutic tool for me. Because now I don't even have to wear Lycra. Now I'm wearing regular shoes on flat pedals. And I'll be honest, when I'm riding my e-bike in street clothes, I feel like I'm really well received by motorists, because they now see me as someone who's actually going from point A to point B. That's not right or wrong. It's just a perception of someone who's actually doing something, transporting themselves, as opposed to like playing bicycle, like we often look like when we're riding, when we're wearing Lycra. So I would say the combination of wearing normal clothes, not getting all sweaty, having the assist from the e-bike, having the public perception of the motorists be positive, all lends itself to those types of trips being very therapeutic as a mental health tool. And that's really when I started to say, wow, I'm coming home such a better person, or I'm arriving wherever I'm going such a better person. And then I was hit by a motorist in 2019 while I was riding my e-bike, and had to rehab some injuries there on my left knee, and use the e-bike as a rehab tool. Started really preaching the gospel about e-bikes, because for some reason the roadies especially love to hate on e-bikes, and I was like, you guys don't get to hate on e-bikes. I'm a roadie. You don't get to make fun of, like, no, this is a bicycle. We want everyone to be riding. I see it play out in couples where the guy is like maybe a super fit, fast racer, and the wife wants to come along, but she's less experienced, she's less fit. Well, now we get to put her on an e-bike and they get to ride together as a couple. I've seen it play out in so many different ways where the e-bike is just like the no-brainer solution. And now you see e-bike companies getting on board with building these bikes out that can accommodate the kids on the back. So mom or dad can use the bike to take the kids to school, like Specialized Globe and these other cool bikes that have rolled out. You see these bike buses taking shape. And what I perceive is that everyone is benefiting, not just from the physical, but the mental. Whether they cognitively know it or not, they're benefiting from the mental side of the processing. And where this really became obvious was COVID, because everything was closed and stopped. No summer camps, no soccer teams, no swimming class, no gymnastics. I actually went to work for a bike shop part-time during COVID, and the line was out the door around the block all day, every day for the 6 weeks I was there, and watching these people just be like, please, I don't care what it costs. Please get my family and I bicycles. Like, we need 5 bikes. We don't even care what they cost. Please help us. We want something we can do together where we can process our stress. And I think really that's when it became so obvious. Wow, this is the solution, not just from a physical health perspective, but a mental health perspective too. Look at what we can accomplish just in the course of a basic commute.
Yeah.
And similarly for me, those were the light bulbs that were going off for me as well, to the point where the e-bike just became a way of life because of what it offers from that processing standpoint. And certainly just an easy road ride on my road bike gets me there too, where you just get into such a zen state. Mountain biking is still challenging enough for me that I can't quite get into that space because I'm still like, oh shit. Don't die.
Yep.
But I've done road biking long enough that I can really get into a great place where your brain is just working on things while you're out there, whether you're aware of it or not. And it's not unusual to come home and have a solution, have something sorted out, have a new idea. I've launched some businesses from bike ride ideas. I've processed emotional stress, mental stress. There's no question. It's the greatest gift ever if we could just get society on board with how bikes are a good thing and not a bad thing.
I'm with you 100% on all those points. We make this joke all the time, but we're serious. Like, we have one of those family cargo bikes. We throw our kids on the back, and
awesome.
Besides the purchase of our house, that bike has been our most important purchase in our lives. Like, it's changed the way we get around. It's changed everything. To your point about the bike buses, we started one in our area, and that's helped change a lot of infrastructure, like in our city, and just gotten a lot more people involved. And so, I've said this, my listeners will know this, like I've said this multiple times, the e-bike and the bike bus is what's going to be changing American culture towards better infrastructure for bikes. Like, it's the best. So
and
cool.
I can't even imagine what the conversations with you and your kids are like on the bike. I mean, I'm sure you could throw them in the back of the Suburban and maybe they'd be on their screens or whatever, and maybe you still have conversation with them, but I can only imagine the connection that you experience with your kids in that dynamic.
It's fun.
On the cargo bike.
Yeah, it's the best. And the aspect of the electric motor, like for us to cruise up the canyon path, like, and not, kill ourselves, like lugging up that thing, it just makes it so much more pleasant. And
that's right.
We're not motoring up that thing going 20, but it's just a nice easy pace, and we just ride along, and they get to experience and see the world in a different perspective. It's amazing. It's so much fun.
You see so many things that you would miss in the car, like whether it's wildlife or clouds, or you smell the smells, the freshly cut grass, the rain that just fell on the hot pavement, the neighbor that you get to say hi to, just the spontaneous conversation that it sparks. It's priceless. It really is.
Absolutely. So, when you said that phrase in the movie, and I've heard you say it more, through your content and stuff, that you believe in the power of the bike. I was like, I love that because it really is. It's a power, and I say it all the time. Yeah, the power of pedaling, and it doesn't matter, roadie, mountain, casual, commuter. Like, for us to be able to combine our forces, right, like you said, and just kind of all recognize that the benefit, we all experience it in different ways, but it's the same. It's powerful. It's really cool.
If we could just get everyone, I firmly believe if we could just get everyone to throw a leg over an e-bike, like, I challenge you not to giggle like a little kid.
Yep.
No one comes back with a frown on their face. And for the motoring population that's not ridden bike, they think that we're the scourge of society. We're in the way. And pardon us.
Well, I think your dogs have spoken. I think we've hit our limit, Megan. So you're awesome. This is so great.
I'm sorry, it's chaos. It really is.
No,
this is well, but it's a lot.
It's the best. No, you're great. I I greatly appreciate carving out some time and talking about it. The meditation, the bike riding, and that was another thing too that I wanted to touch on. I don't know if you've ever
Yeah,
seen
tell
that
me.
quote. There was a quote from Robin Williams, and he's a huge bike rider, right? And he always said, "The bicycle for me is moving meditation,
Ooh,
right?
I
Just
love
this
that.
aspect of just you're moving, your meditative state. Thoughts come and go, and that's always stuck with me. Is just that ability to meditate as I ride. So I think there's a connection there as you've gotten into the meditative space as well. So
You
super
really
cool.
can't not be present on your
Yeah,
bike.
yeah, you have
Like
to be.
if you're in a state of being present and perceiving, and I think it makes some people more comfortable than the thought of sitting silently trying to meditate. Is they're way more comfortable and willing to meditate on a bike ride, and be
Yeah,
with their thoughts, because it's a little bit less pressurized. And
yep, yeah,
yeah, definitely moving meditation. Hey,
for sure. Well, good deal, Megan. Well, thanks again. If you ever venture out here in the camper van, hit me up. I'm in
I
Utah.
sure will.
We'll go for some rides for sure.
That'd
It'll
be
be a lot of
great.
fun.
That'd be great. Thanks for having me.
Okay, yeah. Well, have a good rest of the day, and we'll stay in touch.
Sounds good.